The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Allison.
How are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm good.
Got your coffee?
I got my coffee in my cup. It matches my outfit.
Yep. Yeah.
Because you know how I feel about things that match.
And Sweetie would have loved the rooster. She had so much rooster art throughout the apartment when I knew her.
These are fun too because they have different ones, and I just really love chickens. Chickens are great.
They're wonderful. But yeah, so we were just talking about before we started recording here about what was going on in the last episode we recorded, episode 101. Got some concerns here about Sweetie's husband, Lou.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he was having trouble. Not only was he having trouble, but he was trying to get help from the Navy. And the Navy doctors were really being kind of, I don't know, flippant about the whole situation. Like he was left to deal with pain. At least he was in out of the cold when he was in sickbay, but still. But it's been something that he has been dealing with for a long time and really has not verbalized. And so now we're just and probably because he didn't want to worry Sweetie. And guess what? She's worried.
Yeah, she's called herself Calamity Jane. You know, she doesn't want to get to that point, but she's kind of getting to that point. And heaven forbid if they tell G-Mom anything. So as she said.
No, we know how she gets.
So. Yeah, in the last letter. So hopefully we'll get some resolution on that. They were waiting for some x-rays to find out finally what was going on with Lou over at the base. Meantime, Jamie, also in the last episode, I wanted to bring this up at the beginning. It just dawned on me, and I'm glad I remembered it. After we recorded that episode, and I left the episode as it was because the timing here was very interesting, but I wanted it to be authentic. When we recorded the episode, we were talking about the antique spoons that William, Graham, and Eliza had that had been passed down to the family. And I'd only seen a spoon and a fork. I know my dad used it. And then I was over at my parents' house for dinner that night, and I was like, I wonder what happened to the other spoons. And my dad said, hold on for a moment. And he produces some more spoons. And I'm like, oh, there are more spoons. Because I was thinking, did they go to Joe? And then my mom was like, that's not all of them. So even he didn't remember where all of them were. And she was like, hang on a moment. And we managed to produce additional spoons and forks. So I'm going to share my screen for a moment because this is the picture that has to go on the website. Finally, thanks, Mom, for identifying the rest. I guess she shined the silver because this is coin silver. These are the full collection of the remaining forks and spoons from William Graham. I wanted to say William H. Graham because I believe that is his middle name, but yet unconfirmed because it's so difficult, the histories of the Irish immigrants coming over the 19th century. But William Graham and Eliza McBride, they are all engraved. I think the spoons and the forks were gotten separately, but these are definitely the spoons being referenced. Now, in the letter, she said that there were 3 for each of the kids. Well, 8 of them wound up with Lou. Where is the 9th spoon?
That's actually true because when you sent me this picture, I said there's a spoon missing.
And for a moment, I couldn't remember what was being talked about until I edited the episode. I'm like, that's what we're talking about here. There may always be a missing 9th spoon. Maybe it wound up in an antiques market somewhere else. Maybe one of the other kids got it and it's circulating out there somewhere. If anybody ever finds a silver spoon that looks like this with the initials and the inscription as such, let us know. But that 9th spoon's out there somewhere.
Those really are beautiful, though. Like the handles and the art and the it's gorgeous. And it's so great that your dad still uses these spoons to this day.
Yeah, and the reason that my mom knew where they were is she'd shined them because she uses them in serving. So all my life they've just been probably at family dinners and things. I wasn't really thinking about what I was holding. But it's nice to see these sorts of things still in use and being used. And he pointed out the tines on the fork because they had no knives. That's how they would cut their meat, and you could see which way they held it and things like that. He's obsessed with that. He loves talking about these items and the forks in particular. But yeah, so that was there. And then Jamie, I also messaged you midweek because I was like, our audio channel. I'm very thankful if you're listening on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe. Helps the numbers. I know we have regulars on YouTube. We have the fun commentary that goes on the YouTube videos. So enjoy all of that, and we hope to grow that audience. But we have seen a growth in the audio channels from the various sources. And Jamie, I am happy to report that I said we were getting really close to 3,000 downloads on the audio channels. We passed 3,000 downloads yesterday. So yay.
Well,
We're
yes.
there. A little benchmark there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's like nice other little milestone to celebrate.
But today's episode, we're going to continue into 1952 in February. We've got some world news to go over in today's episode. All I'm going to say otherwise is check out www.lovesweetiepodcast.com to find pictures of spoons if you're so inclined. And with that, we better get started with Sweetie's content here on Valentine's Day of 52.
363 North Main Street, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, February 14th, 1952. Dear Mama, Papa, Sisters, Florences, Franks, and Jean, and the goofball. I received Papa's short letter this morning, and while I've been intending to get a family letter written for several days now, I feel I must answer Papa's letter now, so I shall stick in carbons for the rest of yous guys, and call it a letter. You may or may not pardon the expression as you see fit. First, my first concern for several weeks has been Lou's apparent inability to get rid of this cold and pain in his chest. I didn't take it very seriously, for it didn't seem to be very serious until he started complaining of these severe pains in his chest. The doctor has given him 2 penicillin shots at Lou's request, and finally took an X-ray picture and sent it down to the Navy Yard after his glance. The first one said it looked suspicious. Suspicious of what we didn't find out, but they called him in to tell him it was all right. After the second penicillin shot, he began to feel better, and also noticed the pain was sort of moving. It would go from the left side of his chest up to his shoulder blades and then down again. He slept with a hot water bottle for several nights. It helped him get to sleep, but often I'd wake up to find him halfway up in bed, and he said it hurt him so to breathe. He is not asthmatic, shows absolutely no sign of the wheeziness I used to have, and he does cough loosely. It isn't an asthmatic cough. Well, after the last shot of penicillin, we decided to try sulfa, and after a course of 8 doses, he seems better, and said this morning that the pain was less than it had been in a long time. I did think of aureomycin, but didn't make him take it. He didn't carry any fever but for one night that we found. I was about to insist that he go to a civilian doctor, since he couldn't rouse the interest of the Navy doctor, and he was about to go. But did you know that he'd be subject to court-martial if they find he has called a civilian doctor when he is on active duty? I do not think they would give him the aureomycin capsules unless the doctor there prescribed them for him, and then only enough for 10 doses usually. I feel much better about him now and hope he will continue to improve. I'll write about it again. I believe I did send you word of the arrival of the package. I find that timer is a godsend in timing things in the cooker. I also find that the food cooked in it is better, since I have it too. I can't resist swiping a few nuts now and then when I get close to the kitchen, and if I don't get my oven fixed soon, and something baked, I'll be the only one to enjoy the nuts you sent, and I show it too. You haven't sent another since the one containing the timer, have you? Package, I mean? I also wrote to Jean that hers had arrived safely, and we have now seen the movies. Louis was extremely disappointed that he wasn't in any of them. I was sorry that he did not recognize Sister's kids, except little M. I guess the others had grown too much for him to remember them. The Christmas pictures made me quite homesick, what I could see of them. I'm kidding, of course. But they were good of all of you. Bill's gay plaid shirt surely took well. I was surprised to see how big M.A. has grown, but she didn't stand up, so I couldn't see how tall she is. Little D looks like Bill, we think. And my, hasn't he grown? Mama's new dress fit to a T, didn't it? But we were so disappointed that Jean wasn't in them with you. There were some of her separate, but not enough. Papa's little wake-up alarm system wasn't shown long enough, and isn't it too bad there isn't sound, so you could have explained it. We noticed that one finger was bandaged and stuck up like a sore thumb. It was on the left hand, and we all said almost in unison, "It looks like Papa got caught in his mousetrap." Yak, yak, no offense meant, of course, but after all, even inventors learn by trial and error. We thought the ones of the hunting scenes and the peaches and the farm were very good. You surely must have learned something in using the camera. The ones of Glen that I suppose you took were fine, and we enjoyed the fishing scenes and the snow ones. Makes me wish we had one too, Lou says. Look out, look out. I don't believe I'll try to keep them to show to Marguerite and Joe, since Marguerite is to fly to Texas for a 3 weeks vacation and visit with her mother, and I hate to keep the film and the projector until she returns. Maybe you can send them to us another time. I'll get them boxed ready to send in a day or two, be the good Lord willin'. And I hope I'm right in sending them on to Frank, and then he will send them to you. Right? But I'll have to see them once more myself first. Jean, you'll probably be disappointed in not receiving any Valentine this year, though you did furnish them again. I had a few left over from last year that I carefully put away, and since we've moved, can't find them myself. But if you remember, there were 36 Valentines to send, and there are 35 kids and 1 teacher in his class, so there weren't any left over. I did go to the store and buy some small ones to send to Frank's 3 kids, Florence's 2, and Sister's 4, and Elizabeth's 3. But aside for one for the folks, that was the extent of the Valentines. I'm sorry, but if you'll wait till next year, I'll do better. Before I forget it, thank Susie and F and A. Maida for sending the Valentines to Louis. They had their party yesterday at school since the teachers' convention and Valentine's Day coincided, and he isn't in school today. He got several at school, and then I sent him one, Miss Darst did, Maida's children, and one, the son of our best man, Jean will remember. He is greatly pleased to receive mail, and you take the hint from that. We received a nice letter from KM that as soon as I get it properly answered, I'm going to send on to the folks. I think KM writes exceptionally well, though I credit Florence with some of those remarks, especially the one about "my mama won't write." Just the same, I'm proud of her for doing such a nice job. Her penmanship is fine, I think, for an 8-year-old. You notice I type nearly all my letters these days. But I've probably gotten her in trouble now, because bragging about her will probably make the other aunts and uncles and grandparents want a letter too. How about that, KM? If you can do such a fine job as this, you can write to me and let Mama do without letters.
Those are kind of fighting words there, sweetie.
They are, and I wanted to call out the reference from the previous episode. Remember she said she got an envelope from Iowa City?
Mhm.
I think the envelope was KM.
Aww.
Not Florence. So that's what I suspect that's in reference to.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So.
Well, so just, we remember KM is Bob's child.
First child, yeah.
His first child. So, so this is like how many years, like, and she was born
7 or 8, yeah.
She's like, yeah, she was born, and Florence was actually with his second child when he passed, or when he was, when he died. So, yeah. So the second child never got to meet, but KM is, that's his daughter, and to hear from her and Florence and stuff,
yeah,
it's a bittersweet thing.
And
you can see her not trying to maybe goad a little bit. I don't, maybe that's the word I want, maybe not. Yeah. Just a little bit, to like, hey, stay in. Like, you're still here. You're part of our family, and we want you here. And she's like, you write letters, and Florence. That's just such a hard situation.
Yeah, it's a constant. there was already a degree of separation here because of the pressure from Chester that kind of caused this rift between Florence's side of things after Bob's passing. And there's always an effort from Sweetie to keep including Florence and little KM and little R involved, and to hear from them and get updates from them. So yeah, it's always an interesting dynamic, but it's so sweet to see little KM writing. She's only slightly older at this point in time than Lewis, because when Sweetie was staying in New York with Bob and Florence, she of course had been born and Sweetie was pregnant. So if Lewis at any point in time in the story, basically the easy way to reference it is whatever age Lewis is at, Cam's about a year older, somewhere in that age range. So that had to be a sweet little envelope from Iowa City for Sweetie.
That is, yeah, I have forgotten that she had that postage due. Maybe that's why the postage is due, because the little 8-year-old sent it. Yeah, so we do get somewhat of an update with Lou, because there, he had those medical problems going on. So there was nothing, and then she was like, "Let's throw sulfa at it and see what happens."
8 doses of sulfa. That'll get it. Speaking of, this is a good time to insert this disclaimer in case anybody else is thinking about 8 doses of sulfa.
Special disclaimer. The medicines and other medical treatments noted in these historical letters from the 1950s are specific to Sweetie's story and might not be recommended today, or are even more regulated than they were so many years ago. As such, none of the medical information contained within these letters is to be construed as medical advice. Talk to your doctor. Thank you for your attention to this message. Now, back to the show.
So that's good, but he's still having some pain. So I'm hoping that this situation resolves itself, and then we'll find that out in future letters. So they got to see some movies, and then she's like, "I want a camera too," and Lou's like, "Well, here it comes."
I love the use of the term "the cooker."
I love that's. It's kind of funny to hear how people used to say things back then. So we learned too that Marguerite's going back down to Texas. Her mother has cancer, and then so she's. It is always crazy to me to think about her flying at this
all the time
in the 50s.
In the 50s, yeah.
Because Sweetie did fly once, I think.
Yes,
I think Frank did get her a plane ticket. She had to get a plane ticket one time,
right?
But air travel in that time, even though it was something that was happening, it still wasn't a typical way to get around.
No, the trains are still very, very much in use. I remember when we went to Chicago, Jamie, and we went to Union Station. And all of those Union stations, especially there's one in Kansas City. It's not used for trains anymore, but so grand. I have pictures of the Kansas City station where Sweetie was. That was the primary method of travel for getting across the country. So Marguerite happens to be flying, and it's certainly becoming bigger. But as far as things are concerned, every time most of the time Sweetie is headed back home, it's by train. Unless they've done the road trip, which is a long road trip. It takes about 14 hours.
Right. They did do a road trip.
Yeah, they've done it. I've done that drive to Des Moines. Before this podcast started, I insisted I needed to go to the places. I needed to go to Des Moines, needed to go to Lacona, needed to go to Ottumwa. And I think it took, I want to say 13 hours. It's about 11 to 13 hours from where I am to get to Ottumwa, which is in the southeast. And then another hour or two. An hour away is Iowa City, and then another hour to Des Moines. And then Lacona is about 45 minutes south of Des Moines as well. So that's the general timeline. But the trains, primary mode of transportation. Hey, I wanted to call out one thing about the Valentine's Day notes here. So there's 36 Valentines. She only had so many because there's 35 kids in the class and one teacher. So, okay. You gave Mrs. Houck a Valentine?
I mean, okay. I never gave teachers didn't get the Valentines when I was in school.
Yeah. I loved it. in elementary school, though, when we had, like, those boxes, especially the 90s Valentines were so much fun because it was just, like, a theme, and you had a
Mhm.
box, and you just gave it to, like, everybody in class, and you would get this collection of, like, funny little messages. That was the best.
It was the best. But back in the 50s,
Mhm.
Lewis would get them in the mail.
Yeah.
Like, people sent like, we that was not something I was typically did,
Haven't seen that.
like, we don't send that stuff. Miss Darst got
No.
him one. But yes, but ooh, let's see what else she had to say.
Papa, I sent you 3 pictures in that Valentine. I carried the letter unopened downtown with me, hoping those pictures would be ready to send to you, but I didn't have time to write you about them. The one of Lewis without a hat and coat, but wearing a small argyle-patterned, short-sleeved sweater and dungarees that he got for Christmas, was taken in the doorway, as you see, entering the back door. It was a cloudy day, but I thought I'd try taking it and see how it turned out. His hair, I had combed it just the minute before, and still it fell down into his eyes, and that is the way it is all the time, so it is more natural that way. The one taken the same place but wearing his snowsuit was taken at noon on his return to school. I kept him in the doorway because the wind was blowing so hard, and it was awful cold, though sunny. The one standing against the stone wall was taken the same day, but after school. The stone wall is all that is left of the foundation of a big barn. I couldn't get it all in, and it doesn't matter, because the end further away has begun to fall, and we are debating whether we should try to fix it or just take down part of it. Maybe they will mean a little more with this explanation. I don't envy you your job of heading that you say you must do at the local school. That is one thing I've been careful to watch for, but I noticed the kids in Lewis's class, and there doesn't seem to be any that I'd suspect of being carriers. Egad, what happened to be that she'd let her kid start the rounds of trouble? Has her husband come back home? Do you see her often? I hope you kids will be sure now. Be sure to write and tell me about the match the twins contest. Papa wrote about it some time ago, but I didn't worry much about it at the time. Jean has written about it a couple of times, and now I'm thoroughly aroused and want the proper answer, the one who got the closest to being right, and divvies if anybody wins. After all, it ain't my fault. You've got all the opportunities. A trip to Europe, well, I couldn't get away from my old one, so whoever wins that can have it. But if it is money, remember, I'm a blood sister. I'm the littlest, and probably the neediest. Yak, yak, you can't blame me for trying. Now can you? How did Glenn do in the bowling tournament? I never bothered to mash potatoes with the mixer. Mine isn't so new, you know, and not quite as good as it was either. But it will do me for a long time yet, and I'd just as soon mash potatoes by hand than get the thing out and ready to do it. I guess I bragged too quick on Lewis's new appetite. It seems to have slackened off some, though it is still better than it was. What is this about Aileen's new boyfriend and proposed marriage? For heaven's sake, don't mention something like that so casually and leave me dangling in midair for a week or two before I get the news. Come on, somebody, give. About the twins contest again, don't feel too badly, kids. I'll send the one with the lowest score an appropriate booby prize if you'll write me about it. Yes, I meant to tell you that when we were watching the sports reel and Glenn started skinning and butchering the rabbit, Lou sort of shuddered and said, "That's where my interest in hunting dies a quick and timely death." Lewis was shocked that Uncle Glenn would shoot and skin a rabbit. Murderer. I do think the ones of the hunting and farm are the best you've taken so far. We think D is a nice-looking boy. L looks like Glenn. I'm tempted to stop there, but on second thought, it might be too much of an unkind remark. D would seem to be rather quiet and not very talkative. Are we right? We did see quite a bit of Glenn in L, particularly when she smiled. If I may venture an opinion, I suppose your heat is still hot air, blower forced, am I right? If so, why don't you ask your landlord to get your heater man to come back and make adjustments that probably would even up the heat some, so that your next-door neighbor isn't opening her doors before your house is warm enough? We found our heat was too uneven and called the heater man back to do something about it. He made several minor adjustments, as he called it. Well, they may be minor, but it made a major difference. I'm sorry to hear you are going back to work so soon. Why don't you wait longer than 2 weeks before you start in again? We are glad to have the spoons, I broke down and told Lou you'd had them. He asked, did they use a steel file to clean them? Whatever it is much too abrasive for sterling, and I suggest you do not use it on your good silverware. I don't mean this to be unkind, though these spoons do show signs of something pretty hard, but just don't use it on your good stuff. You'll be sorry. I'm cooking spaghetti and meat sauce for supper. We don't care for the meatballs so much, so I concoct my own recipe, like I did for the meatballs you wrote about. If you want me to, I'll write that out for you. And I'd best go and give it a stir or two, and besides, I cleaned the refrigerator, and have dirty dishes sitting around, and the dirt piles higher and deeper. Oh, wait till I go stir. I can't stop now.
Haha, because she's going to stir up a story and the meat sauce. So she's writing this letter as she's cooking, which is very interesting. I guess the typewriter is downstairs.
It seems like it's kind of heavy to like carry around, but she must be writing a letter, maybe at the kitchen table.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have been kind of developing in my head the floor plan of the house and how things kind of lay out and where the kitchen is. And like, I assume that the kitchen has a big table in it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's just in my head now it is. So she might have it there. But this was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
First of all, that whole thing about the head lice, and that's exactly what it was about.
Yeah. I was suspecting what that was, that he's got to go deal with that at the elementary school.
It makes me itch thinking about it. And I just learned today that lice can actually live on your head without having symptoms, so you can be a carrier. So I have to, that was one source that told me that, so I'm going to go and check up on that. But so far, yeah, that gave me the shivers. Ugh.
Yeah, and they use that term, the job of heading. So I guess that's just what they call that. I don't know if that's still current with the doctors today, if they call that task that, but
Ugh.
yeah.
Well, like, Chester,
yeah.
When you are a small town doctor, you wear many hats. So there's a couple of things. Oh, just talking to Glenn, like she called him goofball.
Right from the beginning.
I mean, maybe things are changing about the way she feels about Glenn. Maybe Jean said something different about Glenn. But also, is Jean going back to work?
That's what it sounds like. So after all this where she was leaving Iowa Pack, now it's go back to work time. Jean was always very busy. So I think probably doing all the tasks at home, as much as there's a lot to do, as Sweetie, detailed. It's hard to do both full-time jobs. It probably wasn't enough for Jean. She's just far too independent on her side that she wants to work. So it sounds like it might, I don't know if it's full-time at this point in the letter, at this point in the storyline, but she's definitely going back to work.
Yeah, I mean, after all of that.
Yep.
It was a good discussion, though. I really appreciated it. And she came clean about the spoons.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was good. But I guess Jean maybe cleaned them up with something that she shouldn't have.
Yeah. Like, hey, you don't clean sterling silver with certain materials.
I don't know. What do you call those Brillo pads?
Yeah, that's probably what was used at the time. Something about that.
Barkeeper's friend. Comet.
Like, yeah.
You remember Comet?
Oh, yeah.
You can still buy and stuff. I don't, but Comet was our go-to. Like, just throw some Comet and scrub it. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
So we got some little things. Oh, we also kind of she references Glenn's children. Because Glenn was married before, so he has 2 kids. And one of the kids, I guess the daughter, favors him a bit. And I understand how she thinks that's unkind to say, but my daughter favors my husband and she's gorgeous. So it's like, it doesn't matter. I actually favor my own father. So it's like, it's not a mean thing to say, but I appreciate that she was like, no, when she smiled, we could see it. That's lovely.
We're going to hear a bit about, usually whenever we hear about Glenn's kids through his previous marriage, that they're always on a trip. So it's always like a hunting trip or a fishing trip or something like that. We're going to get a lot of references to that. And I really appreciate that, because we get sort of this family time that Jean has, traveling to these other places. I don't see Jean just going on a fishing trip or a hunting trip otherwise, but it gets her out of work. It gets her out of Des Moines and out sort of into the country a little bit more, other than just when she's visiting her dad and her mom. So yeah, I think that's good, a good experience. But we do have a third part of this letter here. Now, this third part, you know, it's like a love-hate relationship. I think our audience is starting to understand. There's a person living at 363 North Main Street who hasn't been mentioned, at least in depth, in the last few letters. We're going to get a nice dose of Darst in this last part of the letter.
Yesterday, a man knocked at the door and asked for Miss Darst as though they were old friends. I wasn't too wise, I guess, in asking him in as I did, but what could I do? Miss Darst was downstairs at the time, and so I showed him in. He greeted her old buddy, and then said, "Do you remember me? I'm the antique dealer from Philadelphia. What do you have to sell me?" He made her a $500 offer on the gentleman's cabinet that Jean will remember, and she was telling him about all she had, bureaus and such upstairs. She was ready to sell out at the drop of a hat, and he asked if he could go see them. She said surely, and was about to start him upstairs when I stepped in and put the kibosh on the whole proceedings. She didn't like it a bit, and was just telling me off in fine style. The man thought she was going to beat me down and continued his way towards the stairs, and then when I saw it was going to take drastic action, I just stepped into the door and told him. I said, "Mr. Murphy has told me not to let any more furniture go out of this house, so you can't buy any, and since this is now our house and not Miss Darst's, I'd just as soon you didn't go upstairs at all." He said, "Who is this Mr. Murphy?" I said, "Her nephew," and he said, just like that, "Call him up." I said, "All the way to Georgia?" "I don't think so." All the time we were talking, as I've shown you, Miss Darst was just railing out at me like I caught only bits of it, like this. "I'm not going to use up all my cash for living when I can sell some of this furniture to meet my expenses." "I don't care what he said. As long as I'm alive, I can do with this furniture as I want to. I should be able to make a few decisions yet. What'll you give me for this?" He kept saying, "I want to see in the other room to see if she has that old marble-topped piece." I said, "No, there's no need for you to go in there at all, since there's nothing that she can sell, and the rest of the things are ours." I wasn't making much headway between the two of them, so I reached out and picked up the brook that I'd left lying against the door jamb and started my advance. I was pleased to see they both seemed to realize I wasn't fooling, for Miss Darst started appeasing by saying, "Well, she bought the house, you know." Pat, pat, pat on my shoulder, and the man was backing towards the door. Still, she got the last shot, because as he started out into the hall, she blocked the door, just as I had, and said, "Well, you run upstairs and look at those 2 bureaus in the hall, and tell me what you'd give me for them." He did go up about 4 steps, and looked at the bureaus, and came right back down. But he must want the gentleman's cabinet, because he gave her his card, and said he was going to call after Mr. Murphy had been here. After he left, she started in again about not wanting to use up her cash, etc., and so I gave her a shot or two, too, reminding her that she had promised to sell some of this furniture to us, and wasn't she a little too anxious to be doing business with a tramp runner when she knew he would turn it over for a handsome profit, and if she was so anxious to sell, why wouldn't she be anxious to sell to us instead of somebody she didn't even recognize? She backed down in a hurry, but she had already mentioned looking up the doctor who operated on her for this broken hip and giving him a couple of pieces if he'll come and pick it out. I sat down and wrote to Mr. Murphy that I thought she was beginning to show signs of mental failure, and when he comes on February 27th, I'm going to give him an earful. She called me upstairs the other night like this. "Mrs. Graham! Oh, Mrs. Graham, why didn't you tell me I was overdrawn at the bank? How was I to know?" "The bank sends her statements through the mail. I never lay eyes on it." "Come up here and look at this." I went upstairs, and after looking at her statement, found she had something like $650 in the bank. Her trouble was that she had added up the total of checks she had written, which was $702, and had subtracted it from the balance. I explained it to her, and she seemed satisfied, and so wrote me out the check that I get every 2 weeks. Then, in a few minutes, she came downstairs and said I'd made a big mistake, didn't know how to read the statement, and had to give the check back until she could get some money from Mr. Murphy. So we went over it again. She seemed satisfied, gave me the check back, and went off upstairs again. She called in about 12 minutes. I'd allowed 10, and she fooled me by 2 minutes, and we went through the procedures again. By then, she had started throwing her hysterical sympathy at her, and so I just left and let her cool off by herself. But in the morning she came downstairs with some poor excuse about being overtired and was too nervous to know what she was doing. Well, I felt like saying if she couldn't do better, then that she ought to be relieved of that sort of thing. She came upon an ad for hospitalization insurance and sent word that she wanted to talk to the agent about taking out a policy. He came and gave her a sales talk. I didn't overhear it, for I was pretty busy and decided I'd keep my fingers clean of that mess. He didn't stay very long, though. He took away with him a half-year's premium. Then, just a day or two later, she came up with the story that he had high-pressured her, that she was too sick to know what she was doing, and she sent the whole shebang to Mr. Murphy to handle it for her and get her money back. She draws interest from another mortgage made when she sold the lots up close to the cemetery, and just before she left to go to Georgia, they sent her a check for a half-year's interest, which I deposited for her at the bank. The other day she came down and said they were a whole month late with their check, and she was going to write and tell them she thought they were a very unbusinesslike bunch of people to think they could do an old lady out of that money. I tried to tell her she had received it and put it in the bank, but she said I didn't know what I was talking about, and so I just shut up. You know that the company is going to complain to her lawyer, who is the middleman in these transactions, and she is going to get set up on her ear if she isn't careful. About that time, I look for Mr. Murphy to take everything away from her, and that will automatically relieve me of a lot of harangue. Mr. Murphy himself complains at the way she rips women up the back, as he put it, and said he supposed it was just being an old maid. Nothing ever happens in the news that it isn't the women's fault, and now that King George is dead, and they are hashing up the family history like the Duke of Windsor abdicating for Wally Simpson, she calls the Duchess every name that can safely pass by those old maidish lips and still be decent, and blames her for having gotten the Duke to give up the crown. Now that doesn't sound like so much, but the way she tells it, she almost quotes what the Duchess said to the Duke to get him to give up his responsibilities. It would be funny if it weren't so unfair and so common. She thinks I'm immoral for wearing sweaters. Imagine that. She calls them nasty. And so I'm wearing them and being nasty. When Lou found out about the antique dealer being here, and the way she was ready to take the man through the house and sell out right under Mr. Murphy's nose, he was ready to go tell her where to get off right then. I was tempted to let him, but feel we must make wide allowances for her age and peculiarities, and instead of giving it to her, I'm going to give it to Mr. Murphy when he comes, and if we can get him to take out the things that he wants and sell the things to us that we want, then we are just going to make arrangements to dispose of the rest and be done with it, once and for all. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder how I can get by day with her going on and on and on as she does. But I've discovered that taking one day at a time seems to be the only logical way to do. I try not to hold one argument over so it intertwines with the next one, but it is hard. She got downright mad at me when I said they didn't let those thousands and thousands of people filing past King George's coffin view him. I said they couldn't possibly have seen into the coffin, placed up high as it was, and showed her pictures to prove it. Didn't she tell me I didn't have enough sense to see what the picture showed? The crown was propped upon the lid, and those people walked up and down the steps to look into the coffin as they passed. I gave up. What's the use? As Milton Berle and the other goofs say. What are you going to do? Well, see what a martyr I am? Ain't you kids lucky you don't have to put up with this old biddy? Ain't you glad you're you, and not me? Well, be happy then. I've got to go. It is nearing time for Louis to get home. I didn't get this finished on Valentine's Day. Here it is, nearly 11 o'clock on the 15th, and time's a-fidgeting. Love to all of you.
That was so great.
I love the end of this letter so much, and it's hard to see this on the screen. Our audio listeners can't see this, but she's in a full-on rant when it comes to this letter, because I think it's probably like 4 or 5 slides, single space, a page and a half, okay, at half-inch margins on MS Word, if you're wondering about 12 font, okay, a page and a half And continuing on to the next page after that is like the first 5 or 6 slides of that video.
And there's the rest of it.
Yeah, it's just a wall of text. The only thing I can compare this to is like when I'm reading Atlas Shrugged, which is my favorite book of all time. There's parts of it where like a chapter goes on for 60 pages, especially when there's these big philosophical moments, and paragraphs go on for pages. That is the comparison here. And so she gets into this huge rant about the other antique dealer coming over, because Miss Darst, the number one way she knows she can upset Sweetie and Lou and her nephew is trying to get the rest of the antiques out to not her family. And Sweetie just puts a stop to it. This antiques dealer is almost scared to go more than 4 steps up the stairwell because Sweetie has already, as she said, made her advance.
Mm-hmm.
Which I love this moment. It reminds me of the Shore Patrol. It reminds me of how she treated, that's a great episode. That's one of our number 1 episodes. So if you're a newer listener and you haven't listened to some of the World War II content, just listen to the first letter. We let the whole letter play with no interruption because it's so good. It's another sort of ranting moment of the Shore Patrol in Iowa. Always,
which is always the best.
Always the best. We're going to the Shore Patrol station. That's episode 18. Go back, check that out if you're looking for a moment when she's, you know, getting into this kind of mindset. But yeah, this whole episode. And then Mr. Murphy's coming up. They got to get this furniture out of here before she invites other antiques dealers out. And then the language she uses to describe Miss Darst, leading into the death of King George VI, which we'd mentioned in the last episode, but I said we weren't going to get into it then. Because, of course, we need to talk about this now. They're watching this on television. You know, they're seeing pictures of this in the news. And even that's a debate. Like, who can see the king in the coffin?
Well, the importance of this situation cannot be understated because she has been giving away like her pieces, and she gave away Mr. Murphy's wife wanted one thing,
right,
and she got rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to her, he's like, don't let anything else leave this house. And Sweetie took that to heart. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was incredibly important. And Miss Darst knows all this, but clearly her mind, she's having problems with money, and she's not ever going to be responsible for any of her own problems. Never. So Sweetie is the closest one. Mm-hmm. And she held her ground with this. I'm very proud of her because she said, some of these pieces you promised to us. How can you promise a piece to somebody and then sell it? That seems like I want to use a bad word now but I can't, because I'm a lady, but it just like for her to be that way, it's, it's just like she delights in being cruel. She delights in torturing these people and like doing these things, and nothing is ever her fault, which makes it even worse. And then the fact to find out that she's also a misogynist. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just call it what it is. She hates women. Mr. Murphy said it. She blames the Duchess for the Duke. Like,
Though that is the title of this episode. I had to make that the title of this episode. This episode is called What the Duchess Said to the Duke, because in my mind, because remember, we've got the term, the townspeople in Doylestown, the neighbors have called her the term we heard a number of episodes ago, aristocratic poverty. She's the aristocratic poverty. To me, the Duchess in this episode is not Windsor. It's Darst herself. To me, she is the Duchess saying to the Duke in her mind, this is how I'm going to run everything. So I would just like to say, for Miss Darst, if there was ever a Duchess of Doylestown, it was Marion Curtis Darst. I'm going to give her that title.
The Duchess of Doylestown. I love it.
Duchess of Doylestown. She would believe herself to be it. There's going to be a scene that comes up by the end of season 3, I'm pretty sure, where we're going to see her in all of her regalia. She has regalia for a certain reason, and she's going to get all dressed up as if it's something from the other century. And she will look the Duchess. We'll get a description of this. I wish I had a photo. Sweetie's going to describe it. So, the aristocratic poverty, the Duchess of Doylestown is Miss Marion Curtis Darst.
Oh man,
And she
I cannot wait. I
like that
cannot
title.
wait to get Mr. Murphy's take. I'm really hoping on that whole
Mhm.
situation. And also just like, oh man. But we learned too that she had family members that were committed
Yeah.
and that she had family members who had like numerous problems
Mhm.
and also had problems with their family and stuff.
Mhm.
So for her to be like kind of just alone with Mr. Murphy and like that's it. I mean, I'm kind of starting to get it. I'm kind of starting to get it. So, but that was a great story, and also like a little bit more insight into Miss Darst and like her place in Doylestown.
Mhm.
She owned lots, so she's got a mortgage
Yeah.
on that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
she has some money.
The lots, just for the people of Doylestown who are listening in, when she says the property went up to the cemetery, that's a big distance. The Brower property included parts of what is now part of the modern section of Doylestown Cemetery. So this is the huge history of the North Main Street side of Doylestown. It's the part that's less studied, I think, probably because some of the original documents have been in my attic for so long. I'll be working with the Doylestown Historical Society on this. It's really the missing portion because it was all the Browers, and now we have all the details, not just on who lived there, but what they were like, which is so critical. And sometimes we don't get that from historical documents. It's really difficult. In this case, we have the play-by-play of
Mhm.
what people were like, and Sweetie snooping and all of that. If you missed that episode
Oh my god,
where
that was
Sweetie goes and snoops Miss Darst's bookcase, bookshelf. What was it? What did I call it? Let me give the name. Yeah, Miss Darst's bookcase, episode 99. Go check that out for these references as well. But Jamie, I did want to pull up on the screen here for especially people like the history of the royalty of Britain.
Mhm.
And this is King George VI passes away on February 6th of 1952. So the Philadelphia Inquirer reports this on the 7th. I've looked at the paper on the 6th. It was not there. But on the 7th, we get this article. Of course, front page news. King George dies in his sleep. Elizabeth proclaimed ruler. And the timing here is really interesting because it's not too long ago that we were talking about Queen Elizabeth passing away. And King Charles now ascending to the throne.
Yeah, you can see. So a blood clot is the believed cause.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can see empire shocked, mourned sovereign, ruled for 15 years.
Yeah.
Wow, Elizabeth kind of had that beat.
Elizabeth, I think, has the longest record. I think she is, yeah, if I recall correctly, she has the longest term as the monarch in the United Kingdom. And now with King Charles, who of course was Prince Charles during his term, we're going to hear about Prince Charles very, very far into the future. Little Louis is going to get to meet the prince. So now,
shush.
I'm going to give this just because we're talking about the monarchy. My father, because of circumstances that are going to happen when he is in his 20s, is going to meet Prince Charles. So now whenever King Charles is in the news, he calls him his close and personal friend, the king.
I love your
It was
dad.
a one-time in-passing meeting. I just want to be clear about this. But his close personal friend, King Charles. So we'll get to that story very far into the future. But
I'm so good. I'm looking forward to that one.
And I'm sure he told Sweetie about it. And she's like full circle because here they are watching this when he's a kid. So
she's going to remember. Oh, you knew she remembered that.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Oh, I'm sure
that was okay. But speaking of your dad, I would love to hear from him. And so I know that if I want to hear from your dad, we have to have a Chester letter.
That's it.
Yay.
Lacona, Iowa, February 20, 1952. Dear Josses, Mama says I'm foolish for using this old envelope I found the other day, and I'm using for this important letter to send you the $2 I forgot in my haste the other day and left out. She says not send it, as Glenn won't like letters addressed in your maiden name. I asked by what Glenn would do if she said just laugh, and I said there, I would make him laugh again, for I don't think he will care for me being thrifty and using the stamped old envelope. If you folks get that fiber or plastic material, you could cut me off a strip and mail it to me. All I'd need would be a strip 1.5 by 6 or 8 or 1 foot, whatever length it would be. Cut off one edge of the amount you get me. I need to make 8 discs, about 1.5 inch in diameter, but would be a minimum of about 1.5 by 12. But 2.5 by 6 would be okay. Wrap some paper around it and tie it with a string and addressed and stamped, and that is okay. Want to complete Chris's telegraph instrument. Come to think of it, we'll need 2 1 3/4 inch discs for the button on the key lever too. Sweetie's letter was a long one, but it has too much about Miss Darst. We will have to fix up a questionnaire for her to fill out. We have no snow or ice, and the weather just now is about like March. As the wind is blowing, the sun shines, and then it is dark again and is snowing. We are hoping for a time when spring is here and the flowers are with us again. 9 more days until March 1st. There is yet about 100 more days till the iris bloom. They often begin about the 1st of May till May 10th. I must close this. Love, Papa.
I thought that was such a fun follow-up to Sweetie's letter because he's like, what do you say?
Too much
It
dark.
has too much Miss Darst. Yeah, I think any Miss Darst is a little too much. Just to come out and say it.
Yeah, I mean, when they're getting a carbon, and I remember whenever I turn the page, because some of these letters are 5 to 7 pages long on the original carbons from the typewriter, I don't know what I'm going to get. And then I see a wall of text, I'm like, oh no. What's happened? Because she gets into story mode. I'm like, oh, it's a rant. You just know. And I'm like, this is, but then at the same time you're reading, you're like, here comes the good stuff.
Right?
Like, oh, this is going to take some effort to type all this up. But man,
But it's, yeah, I can imagine too, that's probably the same feeling that like Sister and Jean and maybe even Frank got when they came across that wall of text. They're like, oh, geez.
Yeah,
I gotta set this down because I gotta go make dinner. I can't take this right now.
This is over coffee later, kids, with the dessert. You know, we got to finish up the spaghetti. Nope, don't have time for this right now. Yeah, Chester, and plus then he's like asking for these supplies because he's making something for Chris. Now, Chris is one of Lizzie's kids, one of Sister's kids. So Chris is building something, making something. So it's essentially he's helping the grandson create some sort of telegraph machine, which I think that's just adorable. Maybe they're just gonna like Morse code if they can set this up between each other.
It was cute. Like and then too, like in Sweetie's letter, he talked about like a wake up machine that he had created. So he needs like these little outlets, these little creative outlets. The only thing that he won't do is build some mahogany chairs for Laura.
Still no chairs.
No chairs.
That's
He's just never ever going to do those chairs. I've given up hope.
No.
But this was lovely, and he talks about the flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I was out yesterday and talking about the irises with my neighbor. Our irises last year didn't do well. And I asked her, I said, well, your irises okay? And she goes, no, irises did not do good last year. So we're fingers crossed this year the irises are going to be nice. But I always love hearing about the flowers and stuff.
May 1st through the 10th. Let's see if Chester's timeline is perfect for your irises this year.
I'm going to let you know. Like, okay, so yeah, we got a couple weeks or a few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a nice Chester letter. I love having those. And I thought it was funny. But we do. So we're going to do another one.
We do. Yeah, we have another
letter we are going to do. Oh, this is fun. Now, what I really like about this letter is it's another family letter. But then we get a little bit more specific with some of them at the end.
Oh, yeah.
363 North Main Street, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, February 20th, 1952. Dear Mama and Papa and the family, I am much chagrined to think I'd let little A's birthday slip up on me, especially when Sister so carefully sat down to write out dates for me, so that I wouldn't forget. I shall send her birthday card today anyway, and hope she bears no malice for my neglect. I didn't forget it. I carefully bought the card, even had it addressed and stamped, but things got in my way, and I forgot it momentarily. One of Lou's friends was accidentally killed while on special duty in Florida, and he was, of course, sent back here for services and burial. Lou was part of the funeral cortege, and I went along to drive the car for anyone who might want to go. They held services in the chapel, and then we all drove to a national cemetery in New Jersey for the burial. It was as nice as a funeral service can be, but so terribly depressing. I feel almost like a rag today, and there is much to do. I had to get his dress uniform all ready, and the preparation was more than I'd expected, as well as getting Louis taken care of, and the car washed, and myself ready and there on time. The letdown is tremendous. I must knuckle down to work, for Mr. and Mrs. Murphy are coming up on the 27th of this month. That is a week from today. They are coming to Doylestown, have written, and asked me if I'd drive them to Langhorne, where their little boy is in school, and from there they will take the train to New York, where they expect to stay a week. Mr. Murphy has a convention of some kind to attend. Mrs. Murphy is coming and taking Kay with them for a visit to New York. Miss Darst will drive over with me to take them, and then she and I will drive back when they start on to New York. That is about 25 miles from here, and my driving them will serve some expense, since they were expecting to hire a taxi to take them over. No doubt I'll get my gas bill in return. But what I was starting to say is that I'll have to get some cleaning done before they come. The Fuzzies are playing tag under the beds and furniture, and Mrs. Murphy forgets that she has 2 colored girls to chase hers out, while I have to be chief cook and cleaner in one. I received Mama's letter with the valentine for Louis. I meant to write you immediately, but the above letter will perhaps help keep me out of the doghouse. I want to comment on some of your remarks. About those geraniums, I guess I made my own trouble by putting them in larger pots. I didn't take them out of the pots when I set them in the window box, but put in pot and all. They did bloom nicely, some of them, during the summer, but not all of them bloomed. Then when I took them up and brought them in the house, I split off some pieces and started them separate. But I did put them in larger pots, and probably that accounts for their not blooming. I shall remember what you say about putting them in cans, and hope that next year they will bloom nicely. The century plants, or patience plants, whatever you choose to call them, have just bloomed as prettily as they ever could. I started them in pots in the fall, too, as a gift from an old lady neighbor, and the way they have grown is amazing, and the number of blooms they have produced, as well as the buds remaining to bloom, is almost unbelievable. My Joseph's coat seemed to grow and flourish nicely for a while, but droops sadly now in spite of water and a sunny window. I don't understand it. I didn't inherit your green thumb, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know enough about geraniums to comment on issues with them blooming or not blooming. So I'm just gonna leave that right there.
Yeah, we'll just leave that there because I'm not really geraniums have never been one of my flowers anyway. I like it's kind of fun how she talks about the different kind of plants though. We learn about. And also I thought I had jonquils and I'm not quite sure now. But I do have some gorgeous things. I should post some of those on the Facebook page because I do have some beautiful blooms that have been coming up. And they just always remind me of Sweetie.
Oh, yeah, the Midwestern flowers.
Oh,
but we talk about Mr. and Mrs. Murphy, who are going to be coming up for a visit. We thought originally it was just going to be, I think, Mr. Murphy, but they're going to pick up their son from school in Langhorne, and Miss Darst is going to be in the car. I don't know why. I guess that's their visiting time, is just for them to catch up with Miss Darst is only in the car.
Mm-hmm.
But that's close confined spaces with Darst for 25 miles, and that seems like a bit much. And we get more of an idea of Mr. Murphy's employment, that he's some sort of executive, he's going up to New York for a convention, and we also get more idea of the wealth of the Murphys, because Sweetie makes the cleaning comparison. She says, I gotta get all this stuff done. Mrs. Murphy forgets because she has 2 African-American women who are going to be cleaning her home or taking care of.
She has maids. So she has, she's able to take, it doesn't have to deal with that kind of stuff. However, I think this is also Sweetie with that inferiority complex where she's like, my house needs to be so clean because she's used to this kind of thing. And I'm just like, right there. society expects the woman to like keep your house clean, you know. That's what like it's like the woman is supposed to keep your house clean, and if you don't have a clean house, the woman is the one who is blamed for it. I don't think maybe Mrs. Murphy is that way, but honestly, I mean, from what we've seen from Brower, I think she's probably just a sweet woman.
I think she is a really nice woman.
She probably doesn't care about the little dust bunnies.
Yeah, I've always called them dust bunnies.
Yeah.
And of course, the language of the time is just typical of a letter from 1952. So I'll just leave it with that, and we'll leave the text authentic in this letter and not censored. Heading back into this horribly tragic moment of the service member who was killed, we do have what happened with this individual, and there is an article in the newspaper that I was able to trace back the instance, because we know that the service member had been away in Florida, and timing things up, I was able to identify who this individual was and what had occurred. So this is a little, just from the text, it's a very sort of what's the word, it's a very morbid way for someone to pass away, but I want to make sure that we actually get to name the service member here so he's remembered. And this reminds us that even though the war in Korea is going on, there can still be tragic accidents, of course, during any time in the service domestically. So this was during one of those cruises, basically, that the men take. They go to like Atlantic City, they go to Florida. He's killed by plane propellers. So what I have here for our audio listeners, this is the Philadelphia Inquirer, page 11, that appeared on Saturday, February the 16th, the main issue in 1952. The sailor's name was Robert Morgan Goldsworthy. He was a machinist mate. Now that makes sense that he's friends with Lou, because Lou's an aviation machinist mate, so they're probably working in very close quarters. He was aboard the carrier Monterey, was killed in an accident aboard the ship in the Gulf of Mexico, according to word received here yesterday. It's a very short article, and it explains the following. Officials of the Pensacola, so Florida, Naval Air Station said the 36-year-old sailor walked into the propeller of a carrier plane last Wednesday while it was warming up for takeoff. Goldsworthy, who lived here in the area, is survived by his wife, and then they note the names of 4 children and his mother, young father. It's very, very sad. And it says he was a member of the Reserve Air Task Unit from Willow Grove Naval Air Station and was aboard the carrier for a refresher course. So these are those cruises. So as much as it's like, yeah, Lou goes to Atlantic City, and sometimes the guys go to Florida, and it's like, oh, that sounds nice, and they're getting out from Willow Grove for a bit. Things can unfortunately go very, very wrong, and it went very, very wrong in this case, which is why, and this explains why Lou's so close with the role that this sailor had, and he's part of the funeral, the procession, and all of these sorts of things. So that's why they're there at the funeral. So, yeah, pretty morbid.
Yeah, that's tragic.
Article there, but wanted to make sure that he gets remembered, of course, through the story here, and that he doesn't just go as an unknown sailor in our storyline.
Well, thank you, Allison.
So
I appreciate you finding that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, the odd thing too is I forgot to mention that I did not read this letter.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that there's some stuff in it, and I can see who she talks to at the end specifically. Mm-hmm. So this is all kind of new for me too, like coming up on all this stuff. But I'm glad that we were able to honor Mr. Goldsworthy, and give him a little bit of recognition. Thank you for your time and service. But we still do have some letter that I get to find out with the rest of you guys.
Yes, you do have a picture of our house. I'm sure I sent you one, but don't remember for sure what size it was. We got one small picture from Miss Darst, and Lou took it to the photographer at the base, who is a friend of his, and asked him to make some enlarged copies, and I'm sure I sent you one of those. I shall, however, include some small ones. I took just recently. They aren't so hot, but may refresh your memory somewhat. You should find that one. It is about the best we have, shows up the worst details possible, and Lou maintained that was why you sent us some honey one time, was because I'd mailed you that picture, and you felt sorry for us living in this old barn. I called it Wistful House when we first moved in, then Dismal House, and when I despair of ever getting it fixed up so that it is fit for human habitation, I call it Heartbreak House. Ah, well, the roof only leaks in one place, so we're pretty lucky at that.
I'm going to pause this here because she gives 3 names for the house. I'm not going to say which one to remember, but one of these names is going to come up again later in the season.
We figured you'd like to go to Hackensack when you come. When we know for sure the dates you'll be here, I'll write to Reverend Demarest and see if we can't stop and see him for a while. I'm anxious to go back there myself, and have been intending to write and ask for membership to the Demarest Family Association, but like many another, have so far laid another stone on my road to Hades. I've been wondering if you might not bring M.A. or Chris with you. There would be many things to see, but of course you should plan to come for long enough a stay that we can do a lot of sightseeing and still spend lots of days just visiting and talking. I see your mention of Maida's trip to the hospital makes the news generally known. I've been in on the know since shortly after Christmas, wrote a couple of times, and asked Frank and Maida if it was still a secret, or if it was general news. They didn't answer, and so I carefully refrained from mentioning it. I'm glad you know, too. I think it is wonderful, and must admit, I may be more than a little envious. I wonder how they will react to this invitation you mention. Shall not go further, in case you haven't mentioned it to them. I lost my entire uppers over your story of Aileen. At first, just the 2 front incisors dropped out as I read, but when my chin got to my chest, the rest just dropped out like shelled corn. For goodness sake, do keep me informed. You mentioned Nidra being home. I guess you've seen her baby, haven't you? But you didn't write about him. I'm sorry her husband has gone to Korea. It is a sad thing, I'm sure, but what can you say to give any sort of comfort or reassurance? I couldn't help but laugh at your tale of the Devore twin. The scare of falling through ice would surely be something, but if there is shock and fright, there is always a lighter side too, like his growing up and leaving to get married, rather than being given away. Lewis viewed these latest movies that Jean sent, rather silently, I thought. I guessed that the boy with Jean and Glenn, when they went hunting, was D, and then in the Christmas movies I knew it was D and L, since I expected to see them. Lewis took it all in, but the next day he came and asked me if Jean and Glenn didn't like little kids. I said, yes, they do. Why? And he asked, well, why didn't they get little kids instead of getting such big ones as D and L? Or were they little and they fed them too fast? Of course I explained it to him, but not until I'd had to ram my fist in my mouth. Ah me. Lewis seems to be doing pretty well now in school. His better grades are an encouragement. He reads pretty well and writes pretty well too, but he seems to revolt against the discipline. He is and always has been full of the old Ned, and while he is interested in the work, the teacher said he sits quietly and pays attention and is interested and behaves himself in his classwork, but when they go to the basement or to gym, he is the wiggle worm, and perhaps stages a few antics all his own. He is very honest, comes home and tells me when he gets into trouble, but when he is caught doing something, he says he is sorry and won't do it again. He doesn't, but instead dreams up something new to try out. I blame that, in part, on the fact that Miss Darst objects so strenuously to having children here to play in the house. It has been too cold for them to play outside much, and he just lacks the playing and companionship of other kids. Perhaps it will all work out in the end, or else he'll get it on the end. Marguerite and Joe have found another apartment in New York. I wrote to the folks, at least, that they were forced to move in the big cleanup of the tenement houses in New York. They are paying terrific rent, and Marguerite had to delay her trip to Texas to see her mother so they could get moved. I think she will go on Sunday for 3 weeks. Her mother hasn't been well, had another setback, as they call it, which will make it much harder for her to leave when the time comes for her to come back north. Lou seems to be better. That funeral was quite a drain on him, and he looked very tired and worn when he left for work this morning, but the pain is better. It left for a while, but it returns every now and then, and this morning he said he could feel a deep rumbling in his chest with each deep breath. But at least it isn't as bad as it was, and that is something to be thankful for. I hope it will finally leave, once and for all. I'm having some trouble getting the train repaired. It seems that it is older than what the factory is repairing. The letter from them said it had been obsolete for several years, but that they would send it on to someone else who would do it. I couldn't sell it this way if I were to try and get a new one. And if I'm going to put the money out to get a new one, I might as well have this one repaired. I still don't think it will cost so terribly much, so I guess I'll have them send it on to the other people with a request that they give me an estimate before they do the work. I had ironing dampened, and so this morning I had to get it done, whether I feel like a rag or not, but I left the breakfast dishes standing while I finished. Now I hear Miss Darst down there rattling dishes menacingly, so I'll have to stop now and get to work. I've got to write to the train people and several other things too, so this will have to do. Love to all. Sweetie. Dear Jean and Glenn, it just occurred to us that perhaps Lou could buy you some movie film for your camera from the ship's service. I estimate it would be $1 cheaper on the roll. We are about to get us a movie camera too. I'll not go into detail about it now, but we'll write when the deal is done. That funeral yesterday was about the most tragic I've ever seen, though I've gone to very few funerals in my time. And it brings back Bob's death so clearly as to be most painful. Probably that accounts for my limpness today. The man was a friend of Lou's. Some people said they resembled each other in appearance, so that the weekend reservists called them by each other's names. Lou was surely touched. I'm waiting to hear about your going back to work. Can't help but think you're burning the candle from both ends, and damn sorry. And that's the truth. Hope Glenn isn't sore at me for ribbing him in my last letter. The more letters I write, the fewer I receive. Sure would give my eye teeth for you to be here for a while to talk to and giggle with. I need that right now, and if you were here, bet we could scrounge out the corners before Mr. and Mrs. Murphy got here. This house is terrible, and though I'm ashamed, and could kick myself for not getting to work, I just can't drive myself to start it. But I gotta. Love to both of you. Sweetie.
It was a good letter.
It was a good letter. She actually remembered to sign this letter.
Right.
So she's not at the end of a rant for this one. Oh my gosh. Little Lewis, before we get into the big news of the second part of this letter, little Lewis with his commentary about Glenn's kids.
Mm-hmm. Why did they get big ones? Like, that was adorable. I just love that because it's so funny because they don't know when they're that age, and so they try to figure it out.
It's the stork. The stork just delivered big ones to Jean and Glenn.
They're like little kids. That was so cute. That was cute. I really like that part.
Mm-hmm.
But something else we have. Oh my gosh. Oh, there's so much stuff. Okay, first of all, Chester and Laura coming to visit.
Chester and Laura are planning a visit, it would seem.
Yes, this is fun. And so that's it kind of seems like they are, but where they kind of seems like they're in the planning stages of it.
Yeah,
and then
the
also,
Demarest Family Association. Remember, Chester is the probably sole and he's the leader of the Iowa chapter. So he needs to meet the Demarest of New Jersey, the OG area. So we'll see. But I know, Jamie, what you want to talk about. This exciting news that we get the reveal on from Christmas. Yeah, apparently.
Maida is pregnant.
Maida's pregnant.
Whoa, that's 4.
That'll be the Maida and Frank's 4th child.
That's great. I'm so excited. Ugh, I love it. I love hearing about people getting pregnant back in the 50s. This makes my day.
More babies. Yeah.
More babies. I just love it. Oh, you should see me on X. I'm just like, if there's ever like, oh, we had a baby, I'm like. So, I don't know who you are. I have no idea. We probably don't live anywhere near each other. I'm never going to see you again, but you had a baby. Congratulations. So, oh my God. So she knew. She knew, and she's also kind of being very quiet about it, just in case. But so I have no idea how far along this pregnancy is or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not going to reveal it either. I know I know the timing here, but it's early enough. It's yeah, we're gonna hear about it not too long in the future. Let's put it that way.
Yay. Oh, it's just so lovely. Oh, I love it. This is really nice, actually. She's, she's concerned about some things, and she's concerned about Lou and the whole. I'm sure that really weighed heavy on his heart.
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
lose a friend like that, especially so tragically.
Right.
So, I'm really glad that she was able to be there for him and was able to
Mm-hmm.
support him in that. That was just rough.
Yeah. And then we hear about some other updates from individuals we just simply don't know. So she's getting some updates from Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
But we hear that the husband of one of her acquaintances is in Korea. So we remind ourselves at all time the Korean War is going on at this time.
That's right.
That's sort of unfortunately where we expect to hear about casualties. Not so much the home front, but there's the forgotten war is going on, which of course should never be forgotten. And then we have things happening at home. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, then that also brought, and for me too, and I'm sure you would it brought back memories of Bob, because Bob did not die in combat, even though he did serve in World War II.
He survived all of World War II.
In the Pacific arena, right?
Yeah, he was in both. Actually, we do know that he served. There is a letter from Bob that's in one of the state archives that is of him being a pilot during World War II in North Africa. So he's in multiple theaters of war, and it's just unfortunate he passes domestically in the horrible, tragic plane accident.
A routine flight that should not have resulted in that. So that was rough, and that just also calls, life is fleeting. Oh, and then one last thing, because we remember on Christmas morning the train didn't work, and Lewis was even Lou spent so much time trying to fix it. And Lou was very, very upset about it. But she said she sent it in, and I like it when we get updates, even letters later, that let us know that she did send it in, what the status is. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But yes, that was really cool. That was really fun. I'm really glad I didn't read that because it was super surprising.
Yeah. To the information. But we're gonna leave Sweetie's story here at the very end of February. We're gonna get a little bit more of February with next week's episode. We haven't talked about the twins thing that was being referenced in the other letter. We'll talk about that in the next episode. And the next episode, Jamie, we're gonna start it with Chester.
Oh, see, this is great. I love it. But that is the end of this episode today. So we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.